Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at ThinkWellPodcast. My name is Laura, and I am here with George Strange.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome. So
Thank you.
today I'm going to interview George.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there's so much to know about you, starting with who is George Strange? Who is this guy?
That's a question?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a pretty existential question. Well, that's a big question, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a really difficult question for me. It's always been a difficult thing to talk about myself. Something that I've had to work on quite a bit because we tend to always give a very descriptive kind of answer. So I don't know, 5'7", I'm, I like to do this, I like to do that, that kind of thing. So I think maybe, I mean, I don't see why it shouldn't interest anyone, but I think what I'm really all about is striving to maintain a set of moral principles and live by them. And that doesn't mean that I live like a monk or something like that, always being virtuous or anything like that. But it definitely means that every single day I try to be aware of how I act and how I interact with the world. And I try to do that in accordance with my principles. And so I think that that's kind of the guiding force for who I am. And I would like to maybe, leave this world thinking that, for the most part, I stuck with that, right?
Nice.
I think that's important.
So, what are you most passionate about?
Well, I'm passionate about a lot of things, but I think I'm most passionate about, if I had to pick one, I would say a love for this world, this thing that we call life. I'm really passionate about life. I know that's a really general answer, but what's part of life? Everything, basically, right? We're talking about nature. We're talking about people. We're talking about an ecosystem. We're talking about other beings like animals and plants and so on. And so all of that just makes and the things that we need to do to get by, our behavior, our relationships, everything that we call life. To me it's a passion, right? It's a project for me. It's the project. If I can't find joy and excitement about life, even if I can't define exactly what life is, I guess that's what makes me really passionate about it. It's the only life we know, and if we're not passionate about it, I don't know. I can't see it in any other way. Having said that, I also have other things, smaller things that I'm passionate about, like music and, things like that. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. But life is something that's worth, being passionate about.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So you were mentioning projects, and right now you are in the middle of your, I guess, project, your practice, which is Selfempowered. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Self-Empowered is basically an idea, and that came about. I'd like to say that it's a combination of all the things that I've always been about. I've always been passionate about, now we talk about passionate about thinking, philosophy, right? About martial arts, about music, about things that push you to be creative, to think outside the box, as the cliche says. So self-empower is basically. So I need to go back, rewind a little bit, and how I came up with the idea. But I was struggling this a few years ago. I was struggling with anxiety quite a bit, right? And anxiety was pretty bad. I was getting panic attacks, and I didn't know what was going on. So this was kind of the beginning of a journey, and the panic attacks in particular had a lot to do with with what self-empower is all about. So I realized that panic attacks are exactly like the word said, an attack, right? They come out of nowhere when you least expect them, and they really mess with you, right? They're scary. You don't know what's going on, and so I really liken it to a sucker punch, right? You're just walking along, and all of a sudden you get punched, and that's how it felt. It felt like an unwanted and unexpected attack. And so that's an analogy that it proved to be really, really helpful because it allowed me to tap into my extensive martial arts training. So I've been doing martial arts since I was, a young boy, and that's something I've done all my life. Martial arts has informed, most things about my life, right? And so with that analogy, right, then I realized that, panic attacks are a mental sucker punch, not a physical sucker punch, right? And so that kind of opened the doors for me to start thinking about how to fight anxiety, right? So staying with the martial arts analogy, how do I fight something that it's unwanted, something I didn't want, and something that can come up anytime like a sucker punch, right? And so, I kind of started assembling all the things that I knew about martial arts and how that could be applied to to fight anxiety. And so I came up with this idea of, mental self-defense, right? And in my part of my journey as a student of philosophy, I have become very familiar with Noam Chomsky and his writings. And he talks about intellectual self-defense, right? So that was really similar to what I was thinking about, right? And so it was the idea of cultivating a healthy intellect, right? A healthy mind, and protecting your mind. So it has a lot to do with self-defense, right? And so I took the principles of self-defense, created my own system, my own method to fight anxiety, right? And I realized that it's something that allowed my kind of inner strength to come out and be put to the test. And it was very successful for me. I was able to get rid of anxiety and never experience panic attacks anymore. This has been almost a decade that I've been anxiety free. I wanted to see if this was going to work not only for me but for other people, right? And so, in my wellness practice as a health coach, I started to teach it, started to incorporate it into my practice, and realized that my clients were really benefiting from it. And I started to see some major transformations, not just people achieving their health goals, but achieving transformation, like a profound transformation. And the method had a lot to do with that. Mm-hmm. And so that became for me that's when I came up with the idea of really spreading the word as much as possible. And I kind of went back to develop, a course that I teach online, and from that course, another course about intellectual wellness, and so, this became my practice, right? And it's something that I teach people. That's kind of my mission, right? Take it to anyone that is experiencing anxiety or something related, and giving people, empower people with that knowledge, and so. It's very similar. Self-empowerment is very similar to enlightenment. The enlightenment that was, that people like Immanuel Kant wrote about in the late 1700s, because it puts the power in the person, in the individual, to do the work to protect their minds and to protect their intellect, right? And so to become independent thinkers, and to see it not as something that is a kind of a thing that isolates you from other people, but it's something that, again, invokes your inner strengths to come out and and create, the conditions for you to live a healthy life, right? A balanced life. Mm-hmm. So that's the idea of self-empowered, right? It's about empowering yourself to find the answers. We often hear that the answers are all inside, right? All we need to do is find a way to make them come out. I think I have been able to do that, at least for myself, and it has worked for other people. And so I'm committed. That's my mission, to be able to bring that to as many people as possible, and hopefully they'll benefit as well.
Nice. So Who is your target audience? I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that have a target, they have a niche. Do you have a target audience that you're focused more on?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, that would describe pretty much a lot of people that deal with anxiety. I mean, the majority of the population are walking around dealing with some sort of anxiety. And so, this is probably more for people that are, experiencing low levels of anxiety and they want to prevent, from, burnout or, for anxiety to get out of hand and experience panic attacks and all that. So it's good for them. I think that the majority of my participants are people that are typically they're self-guided, self-taught, so they kind of have an idea already what self-empowerment is. They're also intellectually curious. Having said that, people that are self-taught, self-guided, or intellectually curious tend to work in isolation many times, right? And because they're independent thinkers, they're not always identifying with with the crowd, and so it tends to be a kind of a lonely existence in a good way. And I'm including myself in that group as well. We tend to experience anxiety when we're going through a transformation, right? So this could be a life crisis that's been any change in your health, or people that go through a divorce, a separation, or an illness, something that really shakes their foundation and makes them, look at their lives and think, well, like, what's going on? They experience an existential crisis, right? And that existential crisis can come in so many ways, but one of the main symptom of an existential crisis is anxiety, right? And in fact, if we look at philosophy, particularly existential philosophy, we get a pretty good idea of how they wrote about anxiety and how they saw anxiety, angst, as they used to call it. And Soren Kierkegaard referred to anxiety as the dizziness of freedom, right? So it's kind of like the byproduct of freedom. And freedom doesn't mean like that sort of happy idea that we have of freedom. Freedom can also be we are left to ourselves to figure things out, right? We're pretty free, but it's not the type of freedom we usually envision, right? Like maybe having more resources and being able to have so many options, but this is a true raw freedom. It's like you're in this world, you make your life, go figure it out. And that can be anxiety inducing for sure. And so people find themselves in that situation when they've experienced a crisis. Some people refer to it as the dark night of the soul, right? So you're in a transitional period. You suffer an identity crisis. You're no longer the person you used to be, right? And now you are here, and you also don't have an identity, a set identity right now. It takes time to develop an identity. So this applies also to immigrants, for example, right? Immigrants go to a new land. They have developed if they're adults, they have developed their identity around national symbols and traditions and so on. All of a sudden, they move to another country with a different language and all. They have to develop a new identity, right? And that takes time. It's not an overnight thing, right? So we can really talk about that, particularly in the area of immigration. But so you're trapped in this sort of existential no man's land where you know that you are becoming somebody else. You're not longer the person you used to be, and you're going to be somebody else. You just don't know what that's going to look like yet. So as you can imagine, it's like being in a waiting room, but the waiting room is dark and you have absolutely no idea what you're waiting for and how you're going to get out of there. And so that's kind of that's the ideal client or the ideal participant or the audience, if you will, right? And it sounds like a really like a niche kind of thing, or how many people can be experiencing that, but that describes a lot of people. And if everybody goes at least once in their life, through a major transformation that shakes their foundation. So to just take anybody, puberty is one of those, right? You're like in the case of a guy, right? I'm a man. I was a boy one night, and then I woke up and all things started to happen, like changing my voice, my body was changing, everything was changing. And there's a major, a period of confusion and a period of an existential crisis, right? And of course, we know that that turns out pretty well, but it is very difficult. I mean, if anybody recalls, what being a preteen or teenage years are like, they're very, very confusing, right? Alice Cooper wrote a song, 18, um, 18, and just basically being between a boy and a man, right? And being all confused. So yeah, so that's. I hope that answers your question. That's kind of what the people that are interested in finding out more about what intellectual wellness is. And it sounds kind of scary. It sounds like maybe people reading a lot of books, trying to be smarter. It couldn't be further from what intellectual wellness actually is. Intellectual wellness is about cultivating a mind that seeks to be balanced and in peace. And the only way to do that is to be able to control your, not control, but to be able to understand your thinking. Right?
Very nice. So I've known you for some time now, and I always described you as like a Renaissance man. And I know you always laugh at that because you are a musician, you are a health coach, you are, you're very much into philosophy, you're into karate, you're a black belt in karate. You have so many different identities that make you who you are. So for the past few years, I think it's great that you've honed in on developing this and curating it into this beautiful practice. What was it? What was the moment that you realized, aside from your own personal experience, with the years of coaching that you've done, that you realized you could do more? Like, what was that pivotal moment where you thought, I need to do this on my own?
Yeah. So, I mean, this describes quite a few times in my life. And then again, it's part of the blessing and a curse to be an independent thinker, self-taught person. As you said, I don't see myself as a Renaissance man or anything like that, but I do. I do. So I'll talk about that because this is a very conscious thing. When I was really young, I realized because I was always in trouble in school, I wasn't a good student. I was always judged by that, and I was always told that I was going to be a nobody, and that I wasn't intelligent enough to comprehend what was being taught in school. Turns out that I was a very physical kid. So I was in sports. I was always number one. Track and field. I was, whatever school I went to, I was always the fastest runner, right? 100-meter sprinter, and so I really excelled in that area. But the area of academics and stuff like that require a lot of concentration, which I didn't have. So the problem with that is the model that teachers had, at least at the time, is that, well, okay, I know how this is, kid. You're a jock. You're like very physical. Just worry about your physical activities. Maybe you can go one day into sports, but don't even worry about learning anything, right? That was a very frustrating thing because I knew deep inside, and maybe it was a way of saying, fuck you. Who the fuck do you think you are? That you can predict my life based on an observation that's based on absolutely nothing but the 1 hour you spend with me, maybe a week. And unfortunately, when you're a child and you're going through the school system, you are at the mercy of adults. And adults are the biggest bullies. We tend to think that other kids are bullies. There's a lot of truth to that. But in my life, look around in the world, it is the adults that are doing the bullying, right? The killing and the massacring and all that kind of stuff. But going back to that, so I realized that there was a big disconnect there, right? I always wanted to learn, right? But it's just that in my assessment as a kid, I thought that the school system was broken, right? Now, I love learning and I love schools. My experience in university was beautiful, right? And I know there are some people that are very resentful towards the educational institutions. And I think I was able to at one point sit down and try to figure out what was good about it and what I wanted to keep and what I wanted to throw away. I ended up throwing away a lot of the stuff a lot of the dictatorial and oppressive aspects of the school system. But I still wanted to learn, and that's the thing. I'm trying to get to your question. So how do I learn something, right, without being rejected and without having to adapt to that model of sitting down for 8 hours a day and not being able to move and ask for permission to go to the bathroom and all that. How the fuck does that relate to learning, right? I kind of figure out that what I wanted to do is I wanted to learn how to learn, right? Because obviously I wasn't getting that teaching from schools, right? I wasn't learning. Well, and so that's kind of that's kind of the question that's always been, you know, behind everything I do, right? And so if I find that a subject or something is challenging, my question is not, you know, should I learn this or should I not learn this? My question is always, well, how can I learn how to learn this, right? And so I think that's kind of what also explains why I like music so much, and I like playing guitar, which is a very, you know, hard discipline to learn. Martial arts definitely also a very difficult thing to learn, and so guitar and, you know, and martial arts and all those are systems that teach you so much about life, and it teach you a way to learn that it's so enriching and empowering. And so, you know, getting back to answering your question, I try to do that many times during my going on a tangent, but if you have learned how to learn something, then you can apply that to anything that you like, right? And then you no longer you always need the guidance, the mentorship, and the teachings. I'm not saying that, you know, I don't need teachers, right? But then in a sense you become, you know, the foundation. Now you can be taught. Now you can absorb the information and the teachings. But first it has to come from me, right? And so, yeah. But that's also, I have to attribute a lot of this to martial arts as well, because martial arts is one of those things that if you really believe what you're being taught and you're not seeing martial arts as just like sports to, you know, lose weight or defend yourself, it's a way of life, right? And it also you live by a moral code, right? The code of the warrior. And you live that every single day, right? And that teaches you so much about life, about resilience. It teaches you how to see the world, how to deal with other people, how to deal with, with challenges within yourself, right? And so when I come across anything that I feel passionate about, I know that it's going to be a journey, but I kind of know how to face that journey. Instead of thinking, well, I'm not talented about this or whatever, right? And I think it goes back to your first question about passion, right? I am no super musician or anything like that, but the fact that I can, you know, maybe pick up the guitar and make it sound like a guitar, it's just the fact that I know that I just have a desire, and that's it. And that's, you know, before, you know, having a technical knowledge and anything like that, before I can call myself a musician, first I have that passion, that fire that, you know, that really drives me to attempt to do something, right?
Yeah.
And lastly, I will say all those in the end are exactly the same thing. Learning martial arts, learning how to play guitar, learning how to speak another language, learning how to do anything, the formula is the same, right? Stay tuned for the formula, people. I can't give it here because it's too long, but there's a formula. And if you take that formula, you can apply it to anything.
That's
right?
great. Yeah, it's so much better than what we're taught as little kids, where you memorize.
Yeah.
Memorize everything and just repeat and just hold on to that as best as you can, which if you're not interested, it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. Right. And that's, you know, people often talk about being indoctrinated into the school system. I have my mixed, you know, opinions about that, because a lot of it too is to bash the, you know, a public system that functions really well. I, of all people, have a lot to say about the abusive behavior of adults in the school system, including parents. But I'm not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater because I had a bad experience. I mean, schools are great, right? Yeah. But yeah, the indoctrination aspect is that the measure of your success as an adult comes down to how you can memorize. That's code word for obeying. And then being able to, to vomit that back out,
Yep.
and then people will go, whoa, yeah, you learned really well, right? Good boy, good girl.
Yeah.
The one thing that's always been a really difficult thing for me to understand, and this fascinates me, is that we as adults in this world profess individuality, uniqueness, but what we reward is the opposite. We reward uniformity, conformity, right? So I saw it with my kids growing up, right? If they misbehaved or they did something, it wasn't maybe because they were just, maybe they were bored, or maybe they were trying to say something and didn't know how to say it. But obviously that's not conforming with the norm. Sit there and be quiet, right? So when they come home with, a note from the teacher like that, well, what do? You have to decide, right?
Yeah.
Am I going to reward their individuality, or am I going to, individuality or their conformity, right? And so that's a really important thing to, I guess, to understand about what, I don't even remember the question, but yeah.
No, it wasn't a question. We were just talking about like the whole memorize, rinse, repeat.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And incidentally too, when I went to university as an adult student, right, whatever they call it, and I realized there's so many smart people there, very intelligent people, but the people that are always you can kind of tell the people that are just memorizing books, and when they write papers and they have an opinion, they're just basically borrowing from a lot of their writers, their scholars, but they don't have an opinion of their own, right? And they actually don't think that that's a safe thing to do, and they actually say that that's an unbiased thing to do, so they hide behind that, right? In my opinion, you cannot separate your personal experience, the filters through which you see life, right, are so important. And those are the ones that contribute to making changes and making leaps in the area of science or philosophy or anything that has to do with your mind. And again, it's embracing your uniqueness, it's embracing your individuality and your self-empowerment.
I do love that. And I know that we've talked in the past about this health and wellness industry,
Yeah.
right? So what sets you apart from other health and wellness coaching or form of guidance to others? What do you think sets you apart?
Yeah, I mean, what sets me apart is that I'm not as maybe as knowledgeable as other health coaches, right? When it comes to nutrition, things like that. I guess it's the way your personal filters, right? So when I'm working with people, say if I were to take just a general approach to help somebody get healthier, whether they want to, lose weight or get more active or just develop a more positive mindset. It's one thing is to apply what the industry tells you, right? What's popular there, the new trends and so on. But there's also the part when you really want the person to get unstuck and to create change and to really give them value. And that can only come, in my view, maybe I'm wrong, other health coaches can probably have a better opinion. But in my view, when you can put that information through your filters, right, then you're giving people something unique, right? So I'm talking about nutrition and I'm talking about exercise and I'm talking about mindset, but I'm talking about all that through my lens and through my experience, right? And so if you are able to take your personal experiences and see how that relates to other people's struggles, I think that's what can separate you from other people that might be, I don't know the industry very well. I mean, I have some amazing colleagues. They're all really passionate and that. But I would imagine there's some people that are probably maybe afraid to take that step, right? To kind of look at it through their personal lens because that they think that maybe they're being biased or, it's not about them, it's about your client. Absolutely, that's the case. But if you cannot, relate to the person's pain or the person's challenges, I think, yeah, I think I don't know if it separates me from other coaches. I don't know if I would put it that way, but yeah, that's kind of doing my own thing, I guess.
It's your own approach.
Yeah, I think it's everything. Everything is about your approach, right? When I say everything, I mean if you don't have an approach, you don't have much, because you're always trying to find out what the latest trend is, what the latest, what you know, what thing, how, what's going to work. If the question behind your everything that you do in life, particularly when we're talking about wellness, if your question is, will this work or not work? I think you're in trouble. I think on a daily basis, you do need to think, well, if I'm going to advise a client on this, it better work for them, right? But that shouldn't be the question that's driving your, you know, your mission, right? The question behind should be what is right, not what works, but what is right, right? And we can talk about hours about that. But what is right for the person, not what works or doesn't work, but what is right.
So would you say that's one of the issues you have with this industry, being the health and wellness industry, where it's...
Yeah, I have many issues like I do with the educational system, like we do with politics in general and society in general, religion and so on. Whenever there's a system that becomes institutionalized, it loses its essence. It loses its soul, right? And you see it in music too, right? I mean, music is typical. You know, you have there's only one Pink Floyd, right? But there's probably millions of bands that are trying to do the same thing, and they're sacrificing their message to their originality. And the problem with an industry also is that you have the dollars that are there, right? That you have the investors. When you have the investors, they're not interested in your originality. They're interested in, can you do what the other guy was doing because it's successful, right? So the music industry is a big one, right? The Backstreet Boys, I don't know. I don't even know. I can only tell you, my genre. That's bands like maybe Metallica, Black Sabbath, bands like that, right? Very original. But the music industry is always like, hey, you guys play like Metallica. If you play like Metallica, you get a deal.
Yeah.
If you don't sound like them, then F off, there's nothing for you, right? And so that happens in all the industries. Wellness is the same thing. If you're not talking about the latest trend, if I'm not talking the language that most people talk in wellness, like I'm going to get you to, longevity is one, right? Oh, we're going to work for your longevity or for your strength, for your power, for this and for that. And, and using all those things, those are good marketing things.
Yeah.
But what people are trying to do when they come to a coach or to anybody that's an agent of change is they're asking for them to guide them through their own change, right? To let them experience change from their own perspective and help them achieve that change. And if you're not listening to that and you're listening to just what the trends are telling you, sure, you're going to sound really really educated and really up to date, and it might have some impact on the people you're trying to help. But I would guess that it's a very temporary kind of a fix, right?
Yeah.
But that's my opinion. I'm very opinionated, as you can see.
Which is good. I feel like with your practice, it's very much curated for the person, for the individual, with the methods that you have, right? It's not the biohacking, it's not the quick fix.
Right.
It's very much something that they will take with them, and it'll be sustainable for a very long time, right? So I think that's something that's necessary right now for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean that's how I see it, right? I don't like the idea of hacking is the latest, right? That means basically cheating the rhythm of life, of the world, the way the world works, right? There's a process for everything. When a child is going to be born, it takes about 9 months. When you plant the seeds for a tree to grow, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the laws of nature, right? And we're no different. We're part of nature. And for change, it takes time to create that change, right? So it can't be an overnight thing. That's why I'm always very critical of just people that are very strategic, and I think strategic thinking just leads to a lot of anxiety because, again, asks the question, does this work or not? So you're absolutely right. Transformation takes a long time, and if you are as a coach or a thought leader, whatever the terms are these days, if you can get people to understand that and guide them through that change and be there with them through that change, through that journey, I think that can people can trust you more than somebody that's just trying to give them some quick tips or
Yeah.
or a quick kind of hack, right?
Yeah. So change can be challenging for most people, for all of us, right? What keeps you going when you find yourself in a situation that's very challenging?
What keeps me going personally?
Yeah, like what do you do? What's your process for that?
Yeah.
Your own personal.
Sure. Again, so I can give you two answers, right? I don't know which one is, whether it's nature or nurture, right? I guess I can remember since I was very young, I've always been very optimistic to the point of, I don't know, foolishness, I guess, or just being crazy. But also, and I can give you the other side where, martial arts, I started martial arts when I was 13, so it's been many decades of me. So that's ingrained in me, the principles of martial arts, right? Or, karate in particular. And if I could summarize some, those would be, keep an open mind, right? So if you're going into battle, keep an open mind. If you don't, you're fucking dead, right? If you think that your whatever techniques are going to be better, the other person, is doing the same thing, right? They're trying to, kill you or hurt you or whatever. If you see it from that perspective. So if you're trapped in a corner and somebody is going to kill you, you have to have an open mind. And more than that, you have to be optimistic that there is a way out. So for me, that's always the thing, right? If you're trapped in a corner and you have a person that's 3 times your size and they're squeezing your neck and it looks like that's it for you, well, guess what? That's not it for you. There's so many things that you can do, that don't take a lot of effort. And of course, you have to practice that, right? And so you can apply that to life too. You can get out from under any oppressive situation, and you can make it work. Now, there's always going to be difficulties, right? But if you allow difficulties to kind of give you a pessimistic mindset, then you're not going to even look for possibilities, right? When you're pessimistic, you're like, okay, nothing I can do about this. So you end up giving up. And that's one of the principles of martial arts. Do not give up. Never give up, right? And so you have that. So I live by those principles. But at the same time, I think it really coincides with the way I was born. I was born a really optimistic little guy. And that's done great things for me because life is, as you said, life is hard. And I try not to look at, so much the difficulties, the details of the difficulties, but I try to look at, how that can lead to a better tomorrow.
So with your self-empowered practice, what do you essentially want to accomplish?
To me, that's why I don't call it a business. It's a practice technically because, word practice, you help people do stuff. But to me, I see it as it's the idea, right? It's the idea behind it. It's finding a way that you can help not only yourself but other people, right? How to improve their lives, and that to me, that's the mission, right? So that's what I hope to accomplish. And of course, I have my tools that I use, and they're informed, by martial arts, by music, by philosophy, by all these things. I think I've been able to put them together and successfully make something with it, and it's pretty cool because obviously that's me, right? Those are the things that make up me. So I'm very comfortable with that. But I've been able to take that and make it work to help other people, right? Not only that, I don't even know if I'd like to use the word help, but to be able to assist other people in their transformation, right? But not only that, I think that everything that we engage in, right? Whatever activity is, particularly if it's something structured like a business or, whatever, that we have the potential to do more than that. So this is evident in my practice, right? If you're familiar with Self-Empower, what we do is we not only, helping people that are struggling with anxiety, but we also want to help those that help people that are struggling with anxiety. And I'm referring to dogs. We've done a show about dogs and puppies. They're probably the best, emotional support for somebody experiencing anxiety. So if they're there to be part of the equation, right? Just to look at it from that perspective, it's our duty to give back. But they're not just part of the equation. They give us absolutely unconditional love. So to me, you can continue with that, right? So, for me is to assist people in their transformation, but at the same time is to also assist, the dog community, as I call it, and at large. And that's what I'm hoping to achieve, to continue to assist, help, whatever the term is.
Love it. So one more question for you before we wrap this up.
Okay.
And this is the yogi side of me. What is your daily routine?
My daily routine. Yeah, so when I get up in the morning, most people call it a gratitude practice. It's just, being able to acknowledge that all the good things that we are, not that we have, but the things that we are, not just the good things, but everything, right? I guess I've learned to also appreciate those challenges and to be able to articulate them in my gratitude practice. I think starting the day with gratitude it's the most important thing, because now you have a really good foundation for the rest of the day. You know who you are, you know what you have, you know your support networks, everything that you're grateful for, right? People around you, everything. And that, for me, the first few hours of the day are more creative, so it's more an intellectual activities, right? So I got to, whatever's on my mind, I have to put it down on paper or, computer, whatever. So I work on that with ideas, crazy ideas, whatever it is. And then in the afternoon, I like to, it's more of a physical thing. So I honor that too. And so I still practice martial arts, go to the dojo a couple of times a week. I try to do that. Work out on my own as well. I do my strength training, my sprinting. So it includes both the physical and the mental. I spend a lot of time by myself reflecting. So I would say thinking is probably the largest activity in a day. And when I say thinking, I'm not just, oh my God, going crazy with, looping thoughts in my mind. I'm actually intentionally thinking. So you could say that it is a meditative practice throughout the day.
Yeah.
I just, that's kind of my routine. So the intellectual part of it, of course, includes the creative. So it could be playing guitar, mostly writing, thinking and writing, right?
Beautiful. And one last question.
You said that already.
What is your definition of health and wellness?
Health and wellness is to be able to live in harmony. Harmony is also something that you have to figure out what that is for you. It's different for each individual. But it's harmony, and that means that, to me, everything is a relationship. We are here to relate to the universe, to relate to the world, relate to other people, relate to animals, relate to the air, relate to everything, right? Relate to our own selves. So in the end, for me, harmony would be to have a good relationship with myself, right? And that means a good inner dialogue. But it's also the ability to understand that we live in a world that's physical, and it's very, very much give and take, and you're always participating. So I would say meaningful participation and in life. That's it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
very enlightening. I
Was it?
think that a lot of people will get to know who you are, and I really hope that people reach out to you, because we do need a little bit more guidance, especially with the distractions, the society, anxiety. I think this will be, a really great what I know you have a couple of courses, but your methods and just your overall guidance for individuals, I think they'll really benefit from
Yeah.
that. So
Appreciate
you.
that. Great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the interview.
Thanks. Yeah. So we'll have all of your information, your website, your Instagram, and everything else on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage people, if anxiety is something that you're experiencing, to check out my course. It's called Fuck Anxiety, F-U-C-K Anxiety, Fight Uncertainty with Confidence in Your Knowledge. So it just happens to spell fuck, and I love it because it maintains that attitude of F-U. But at the same time, it's really helpful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, George.
Okay.
And thank
Awesome.
you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.